Namaste, everyone, and welcome to episode 17 India a Feeling, which is a travelogue series. Today, we have some very important people amongst us, and I'd like to welcome Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi from the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India, Durban, South Africa. We've got Kubashnee Naicker, who's an educator at Grandmore Primary School in Phoenix. We've got Mr. Kandy Pillay, who is the principal of Maidstone Primary. As always, a pleasure to have Sashil Manor, who is our IT guru. Sifire Mchuno from the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India, Durban, South Africa. Welcome everyone to today's episode. First up today, we have Ms.Kubashnee Naicker, who is going to give us her account of the travelogue series.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Kubashnee Naicker, and I am from Phoenix, South Africa. I would like to share my experience of my visit to India in the year 2006. In the year 2006, I had the privilege of visiting the beautiful motherland of India on a mission trip. So I was accompanied by my pastor and his wife, and it was an incredible journey to enter the motherland where my ancestors actually originated from. It's a beautiful country. I enjoyed the buildings and the sights and the smell of delicious food. But I think the highlight of my experience as an educator was having the privilege to have fun and to educate children in 3 different orphanages. So as an educator, obviously, I love working with children. I've been teaching for 21 years. And when I came to India, I was given the privilege of visiting 3 orphanages. And at the orphanages, I had some really exciting children programs with beautiful song and dance. And I did puppet shows. The children were wonderful. I loved the level of respect that the children in India receive a teacher in. I think that was phenomenal. And I would really like our South African children to learn that, because that's something that really touched my heart. As we entered the orphanages, we were welcomed, we were garlanded. It felt so amazing. It made me feel honored. And I really admire the grooming and the teaching of the children in India with the way they receive elders and especially teachers. And I had lots of fun with them. They were very receptive. They enjoyed the creative programs. They loved the puppet shows. They loved the teachings. So I used all creative methods to teach the children good values on loving God, the love of God, loving family, respecting elders, and also what it means to generally be a good soul, a good person, like our honored Mahatma Gandhi always taught us. If we pass through this world, how we should make a difference in the lives of different people. And for me, as a primary school teacher at Grandmore Primary, wherever I go, I'm glad that I had the opportunity to take these lessons internationally to a beautiful land like India. So that was amazing. And I loved I loved the hospitality of the people whose homes we visited in, and that's something that stood out strong. I would like to think in Indian culture, which is hospitality. When you visit people's homes, how you are received, you feel loved, you feel honored, you feel a part of the family, you feel welcomed. And I know we visited the homes of pastors there in India, and it didn't feel like I was away from home. It actually felt like home. From the time that the plane landed to visiting homes in India, right up to the orphanages. And one significant experience for me that will always stick in my mind was my visit to Andhra Pradesh. And I remember the humility of the people. I remember going into a tiny little house that was owned by some elderly people, people that were old enough to be my parents. But I remember that as much as they were not living in the most appropriate physical um, surroundings, but what I felt so strong in the people of India was something that I think could change the world, and that is love. When I entered this little home that was owned by some elderly people, I felt so loved. I felt that this is the home of my own parents. And that's something that I will never forget about India, that I could feel the love of God in the hearts of people. And that is the most amazing experience that I had in India. So, another great memory of the beautiful land of India is the sumptuous, extremely delicious meals that I was able to eat. I was able to eat in the homes of people. Um, I remember in particular a very large meal that was prepared for me whilst I was there. It was after a church service was held, and I remember that there were huge pots with some really, really delicious smelling food that I could get the scent. And the other experience that I remember clearly was visiting one of the hotels, which I later learned was affected by the floods. And that's something that will stick in my mind because I remember when I went to have dinner at the restaurant, I was told that this was one of the hotels that was affected by the tsunami floods and all the work that had to be put into this hotel to reconstruct it. It was a fabulous hotel and the food was fantastic. I also would like to speak about the beautiful fashion in India. If I had the privilege of going back to India tomorrow, I would be on the next flight because I love the Indian clothing. The Indian clothing is elegant and exquisite. And for me, as a female, I like the modesty and the beauty in the apparel of Indian women. I loved purchasing the multicolored saris and the different kinds of shararas and also the jewelry. A girl's best friend is diamonds. I loved all the glitter and the glamour of the beautiful jewelry that I was able to purchase. And I think for me, uh, having traveled a little bit, uh, India is one of the best places to shop because you could take a little money, but you could go back to your hotel room with lots of things that you really like. And they were different. I liked beside the Indian apparel, there was also some really lovely casual wear. I remember purchasing my brother an awesome Ferrari jacket. And so the clothing was amazing. Uh, the other thing that I loved most about India was, I think, the most adventurous experience that I had in India was my ride on the auto. I just loved my ride on the auto. It was so much of fun. And I love the patience of the drivers in India. And I think if from all over for the world, I think Indian drivers are the most patient drivers because with the volumes of traffic at different times, I could still see an understanding and an intense level of patience with all the different types of drivers. Uh, from what I heard after having some conversations while traveling on the auto, uh, that there had they hardly are accidents in India because the drivers just have such a lovely understanding. They are very patient. Uh, and I liked this. This was intriguing for me how you would have a large family travel on one little auto and everybody knew exactly how to sit and how to arrive at their destination safely. So India is a beautiful country. It's a country that I would definitely want to visit again when it is much safer. And I would encourage everyone who has not visited India to visit India because it is definitely a magnificent country. As music is a universal language, and beside being an educator at Granmore Primary School, I am also a qualified, trained music, dance, and drama tutor. And I run an academy where I train in the arts. And one of the things that fascinated me as a creative arts trainer and performance artist on stage was the beautiful heritage of music and dance in India. So I love the music and dance, and I think we all here, even in South Africa, Bollywood is big. Everyone has heard of Bollywood because of the production companies and the excellent choreography and the beautiful voices of our famous artists. And I didn't have the privilege of meeting any of the Bollywood stars, but I hope in the future that I will have the privilege to visit India again and have the privilege to actually visit one of these famous Bollywood stars that we often see here, because Bollywood is big in South Africa, that's for sure. And what I would also like to highlight is the amazing architecture of the buildings in India, which is really glorious. The places of worship, the churches. For me, as a Christian, what was very fundamental for me was the visit to the St. Thomas Church. So I was told that St. Thomas, one of the disciples of Jesus Christ, was martyred at the St. Thomas Church. And that was a deeply spiritual experience for me, being a committed Christian, going to a church that would highlight church history for me. And that was quite profound, an experience that I would never forget. So the skies of India are beautiful, the waters of India are beautiful, and India is a fun place, a place of recreation. And of course, for us South Africans, what really comes to mind for us when we think about India is the famous sport of cricket. So we know that our top cricketers uh, are there in India, and we know that we wait to watch them here on TV all the time during cricket season. So India is really, really awesome. India is a place to be, the motherland for us as South Africans whose roots lie in India. The other very amazing memory for me is the diversity of language. And you know, as a teacher, what I found is something that we South Africans could maybe implement in our schooling system. Um, from what I was told, that most Indian children can speak at least three official languages. And that was quite amazing because as per South African schools, you're only required to know two official languages. Although South Africa has 11 official languages, but most of our children can only really speak two. So I think that was something that as a teacher, I would like to have brought back from India, that we could introduce at least one more language to our children here in the schooling system in South Africa. So I also learned that education is major in India, and children are encouraged to learn as much as they can, and being a very progressive world, information technology is the way going forward. And from what I learned about India is that all our amazing computer engineers are from India. A lot of our software programs that we currently use here in South Africa has been actually brought over from India. And that's something that's amazing about. I hope at one stage, my son loves IT. I hope at some stage you could come to India and maybe study IT there in India, because I heard that India has the world-renowned IT universities. So India is the place to be, for sure.
Thank you, Kubashnee Naicker. That was truly informative and something that I really enjoyed listening to. Right now, we're going to the screening of a video on incredible India. This one is definitely one not to be missed. Enjoy. Wow, wasn't that a lovely experience? Didn't you enjoy that video? I most certainly did. And I cannot wait to go back for another visit to India. Next up, we have Mr. Kandy Pillay, the principal of Maidstone Primary School in Phoenix. Welcome, sir, and we look forward to your account on this India Feeling travelogue.
Thank you for having me, and I want to place on record my thanks to Dr. Yogi for giving me this opportunity to talk about my experiences when I traveled to India. And I'm going to start by saying, incredible India, incredible India. And that's what I discovered, because that's how India is marketed to us as South Africans. And in 2011, I had the good fortune for the first time to tour India, and that was a family tour. So I traveled with my mom, who was 81 years old at that time, and she's still alive today. She's 91. I traveled with my wife, my daughter, two nephews, and my sister-in-law. And it was an 18-day tour of India. We left Durban on the 20th of December, traveled to OR Tambo Airport. From OR Tambo, we flew to Dubai, spent 2 nights in Dubai, and that was just a stopover and visiting en route to our final destination and where we spent most of our time. And we landed in Bangalore. And of course, that was my first time in 2011 arriving with my family and a group of 7 people on a family tour that we had pre-booked through Serendipity Tours in Durban. And with their guidance, we had decided that we're going to do the south of India. And as a family, we felt at that time it would be a bit challenging, especially with my mom being 81 years old, to do both north and south. And we decided that we'll spend that tour focusing on the south of India. So we arrived at Bangalore airport, and of course, arriving at the airport was quite an experience, seeing all the people at the airport and the busyness of the airport and our excitement of being in India for the first time. We calmly proceeded to the exit and waited to be picked up by our tour organizer. And we did a tour. We traveled by car from the airport, Bangalore airport, to the home of Swami Prashanti Nilayam. So in 2011, Swami had passed on. Satya Sai Baba passed on earlier in the year, but we hadn't known that when we had booked our tour, and we arrived at Prashanti Nilayam, and we spent Christmas there. And of course, it was an overwhelming experience for all of us, having arrived at the ashram, spending our Christmas there and getting involved in all the activities at the ashram. We spent 4 nights at the ashram. And from there, we did a bit of touring, visited significant places where Swami had climbed a guava tree as he grew up, and other places around the ashram in Prashanti. And that was quite a significant part of our tour, because our intention was to visit, spend some time there, and then move on. We combined it with a visit to Swami's ashram and to some touring and relaxation, and also visiting some temples along the way. So from Prashanti, we traveled back to Bangalore for some shopping. And I remember in Bangalore, we visited a beautiful Shiva temple. And there also we had a tour guide who took us around Bangalore. We did a fair amount of shopping, visited the Shiva temple. And I remember going into this incredible golden temple. The serenity of the place, the magnificence of the building, the architecture really had us awestruck. And the friendliness of the people, the atmosphere at the temple. We really enjoyed our stay in Bangalore. From Bangalore, we then drove down to Chennai, and I think we spent New Year's Eve in Chennai. and we traveled up to the Tirupati temple to do our prayers and get some blessing from the temple. It was a fantastic journey up winding a mountain, um, up the mountain in a jeep, the jeeps that you'd see in Tamil movies or Hindi movies. It was beautiful to travel up the mountain in one of these jeeps. It was a rainy day, I remember. Also a very significant time of our journey, because we arrived at the temple and it was so well organized that as foreign nationals, you get to leave the crowds and pay a different amount so that you don't spend too much of time queuing, and they kind of redirect you so your passage through the temple is not a long drawn out affair. It's a special dispensation for tourists, and we appreciated that, having avoided many of the locals and the crowded areas. From there, we drove down to Kanyakumari, the furthest, the southern tip of India, spent some time at Kanyakumari, and then it was off to a seaside resort where we spent 3 or 4 days at Uday Sumatra. It was a seaside resort in Kerala. Beautiful relaxation on the beach, being looked after by incredible hosts at the hotel. That was also a very special time at the hotel, enjoying the local food, the sambar, which is a staple food of people. We enjoyed that, and all the Indian foods. South African Indians can't prepare the meals like you have in India. The spices are different, the taste is different. And of course, the friendliness of the people was really captivating and humbling, actually. So we enjoyed our stay at the seaside resort. From there, we moved on to Lake Son, which is a boathouse resort. You can hire a boathouse and stay for a couple of days on the lake. But we chose to be, because of my mom, we chose to be at the hotel. We stayed there, relaxed, had some good body massages, and were pampered by the locals at Lake Song. That was Lake Song. And then onward, we spent a night or two at Lake Song, and then onward to Cochin. Cochin being a very predominantly Catholic town, that was what we were told. Lots of churches, beautiful resort, stayed in a beautiful hotel. It was a Holiday Inn hotel at Cochin. Unfortunately, it was just a one-night stay. We really did a lot of touring that day, enjoyed our hotel accommodation and the friendliness of the people. And from Cochin, we moved off to Mumbai. And of course, in Mumbai, you cannot leave Mumbai without shopping. That's where the ladies went crazy with the shopping. Also had a tour guide to take us to the exciting places for shopping in Mumbai. And we left Mumbai, traveled via Dubai to Johannesburg, and we returned to Durban on the 10th of January. We left in 2011, arrived in 2012. So that was my first tour to India. Incredible. We still talk about it to this day, still occasionally viewing our pictures and reminiscing of the friendliness of the tour guides, the drivers, and the people of India. And we long to go back. And COVID has prevented us as a family to go back to India. But we're looking forward to our next trip as a family. Then I was fortunate enough in 2012, I was given the opportunity of going back to India. I was teaching at the time. I was a deputy principal and teaching at the time at Amshlali Preparatory School, teaching mathematics to grade 7 learners. And I have a passion for problem solving. So there was an opportunity that came up to lead a South African team of 12 learners to participate in an international maths and science Olympiad. And I was chosen by the organizers to lead that team. So a group of 24, 12 learners, 12 adults being made up of myself and 2 other teachers, one to head up the maths group and one to head up the science group. And the other 9 were either parents or grandparents of the children that went along on the trip. So in 2012, I got a second opportunity to tour India. Fully paid for trip, It was beautiful. My school had picked up all the bills, so I just had to go along and perform my duties as a team leader. So I found myself on the 21st of October boarding a plane out of Durban, traveled to OR Tambo again, once again, and we flew in this time to Mumbai. And we were predominantly spending most of our time in northern India. So, wow, that was fantastic for me because I had a year earlier been to southern India, and there was an opportunity to enjoy India in the north. And so we arrived in India on the 21st of October in Delhi. And on the 22nd of October, we did a tour of Agra. And our group of 24 individuals made up of 12 learners. The learners were 12 and 13 years old. And then, of course, the parents, group of 12 learners, and the rest of us, adults, we traveled to Agra and Mathura. And lo and behold, I was standing in front of the Taj Mahal, this majestic building and the significance of the Taj Mahal. And I never thought that I would be standing in front of the Taj Mahal. And it was a wonderful experience. Took a lot of photographs there. The children really enjoyed the history of the place and the tour of the Taj Mahal. We also had blessings to visit the Red Fort. So we also visited the Red Fort. So the tour was the main objective of the tour was to get to the International Maths and Science Olympiad. But we said we're traveling all the way to India. We're not going to just go for the competition, which was a 5-day competition. We're going to make the most of it, and we're going to do a fair amount of touring. So that was factored into the program, which I thought was brilliant by the coordinators. And so we toured Taj Mahal and the Red Fort in Agra. And then we went on to a overnight stay, whilst touring Rishikesh. So we traveled all the way up to Rishikesh, and we bathed in the Ganga River, one of the tributaries. I was told that it was a source of the Ganga River. So all the students, and we had some white students from Amshtali Prep. There were 3 of them, if I remember names: Edward Yeo, Richard Patterson, and Bianca Ray. And we had an Indian student from Amshtali Prep, and she was a Miraj child. I just forget the name just now. And so it was a fantastic experience to see our white children also participating in the Aarti at the river, dipping themselves into the Ganga, and just being part of the program, including the parents, by the way. The parents also participated. So it was fantastic to see that. And we did this all in front of the huge Shiva and Mother Lakshmi statues that is in the middle of that part of the river. We did Aarti there, and of course that was a very humbling experience for me as a South African Indian, having been right to the Ganga river and having performed that ritual there. I felt really blessed, and of course spiritually uplifted, and seeing all the people around us as well, the locals and other tourists performing the same rituals that we performed, was a really humbling experience. So that was a wonderful part of that tour. We also went along to, we also toured Haridwar as well. So we went to Rishikesh and Haridwar. And then on the 25th of October, we did a tour of Delhi. We returned to Delhi, did a tour of Delhi, and there we visited the Lotus Temple. Fascinating, the Lotus Temple. And I remember the Lotus Temple, our group of 24 went into the Lotus Temple. We all had to sit down, and we spent a significant time inside the temple just in meditation, not talking to anybody, sitting in a space, reflecting on our journey thus far, and just enjoying the architecture of the temple, the atmosphere that was present, and it was a special moment for the entire group, and a very memorable one at that. And so from the Lotus Temple, we did some shopping. And for the very first time, I and my lens and I, and the rest of the tour, we had 24 people. So we hired 8 tuk-tuks, the tuk-tuks, and we had 3 people per tuk-tuk. And we traveled to do some shopping in Delhi at the Carol Bagh. And that was a memorable experience. We ensured that there was an adult with every 2 children or 2 adults per child. And that was a fantastic experience, traveling by tuk-tuk in busy Delhi. And so they have their, the shops that they take you to, the malls that you go to, and so on. And of course, the pressure to buy. And some of our children, it was good to see Richard Patterson. We had a competition. Who could buy the cheapest little tuk-tuk gift? So there was a competition. Who would be the best negotiator to get the best price on the tuk-tuk? So there was a competition amongst the children, just so that they could engage in negotiating a better price. And Richard Patterson had won that thing. He bought it for the cheapest price. Obviously, they were paying in rupees at the time. So that was also very interesting. And then on the 27th of October, we had to leave Delhi and we traveled by train to Lucknow. And that was our destination for the International Maths and Science Olympiad, where we had to spend 5 days and the children had to participate in both. We had 2 teams, 6 that participated in the maths competition and 6 that participated in the science competition. We traveled to train to Lucknow from Delhi. And I'm going to try and pronounce the name of the train because it was an express train. And I've written it down here in my notes. It was called the Shatabadai Express, if I remember that correctly, spelled Shatabadhi Express. And that, I was told, is especially for tourists to be in, so we'll be comfortable and we will not be overwhelmed with other passengers. And we had obviously pre-booked that. So that was a memorable journey for the children. We arrived at Lucknow to go to the City Montessori Inter-College in Manak Nagar in Lucknow. And when we arrived at the train, and this is what some of my children who have finished university now, some of the kids that traveled with me on that trip have now finished university. Many of them have gotten maths and science degrees, and they're adults, and we still keep in contact. And we often speak about our arrival by train in Lucknow, where we all alighted from the train and we were all garlanded with these fresh flowers and escorted from our coach to our transport or to a waiting area where we had fresh beverages given to us led by a band. And of course, many of our hadn't experienced that before. And that was absolutely humbling as well, and a very memorable experience. So the children talk about it up to this day, and some of the other adults that came along on that trip. And so there we were in Lucknow for the 9th IMSO, the 9th IMSO, which was in 2012, which lasted for 5 days. So we stayed at the City Montessori Inter-College in Nagar. We spent 5 days there in preparation and participation for theoretical exams and science experiments that the children were involved in. There was a cultural presentation at the end of our stay there, and an awards function, and of course a farewell dinner. And I'm happy to report that 6 of our learners won bronze medals. And I was told that for the South African team and by the organizer, that was one of the teams that performed very well over the years, having entered these competitions. So that was our trip to our second trip to Lucknow for the challenge. And then on the 1st of November, we traveled back from Lucknow back to Delhi. It was an overnight trip, boarding the train at 1 o'clock in the morning, arriving at the Lucknow train station was quite overwhelming for our learners and myself, because when we got to the station, there were a lot of people waiting for trains. So it was really full of people sleeping on the train stations and so on. And we had to negotiate our bags. So we had to help our children carry the bags over people that were sleeping in, find our way, and the adults had to get involved. And I had to make multiple trips as the team leader to ensure that all our bags got to the right platform. There we waited for several hours for a few minutes, 45 minutes to an hour, waiting for our train to arrive so we can get back to Delhi. And of course, we saw trains arrive and leave. And I remember a remark passed by one of the parents that said, "Mr. Pillay, when our train arrives, I hope that we are comfortable as we were when we on our initial journey to Lucknow." And lo and behold, when our train arrived, we had bunk beds, and we had bunk beds allocated to us, and everybody was allocated a space. We all got onto the train, and I vividly recall a comment by Edward Yeo, who had got into his bunk bed, put down his sail, closed his bunk bed, and then lifted it up and said, "Mr. Pillay, I could do this again." There's a grade 7 child said that, "I'm having such great fun. I could do this again." So that was overwhelming for me as well, to know that the children were having such a great time in India. And so we traveled back to Delhi, arrived in Delhi, picked up further luggage that we had left at our airport, went on to the airport, the Delhi airport, flew back from Delhi airport to OR Tambo, and then flew into Durban. But it was an absolutely different experience from family. Going with family is a different experience, and traveling with children and different adults was totally different experience. I felt a bit of pressure during my second trip because I was in charge. I had to ensure that everybody had to be on time, get up early, make sure we get the bus, make sure you're ready to tour, make sure the children had their lunch. And of course, the kids some of the children weren't used to the local food. They tried it. They had that, the adventure of trying it, but they preferred the fiery chicken KFC. Only India serves it. We don't get it in South Africa. Fiery chicken, pizza. They love the pizza, and so they got by with eating the Western food. And so that was my experience of India, and it's true to the adverts that we see on South African television, where they talk about incredible India. And I long for my next trip to India, whether it's a family trip or whether I go on a business engagement through education. I'm really looking forward to this COVID going away so that we can go back to India.
Thank you, sir. That was very enjoyable. Thank you for that account of your journey. And now we have Mr. Sifiwe Mchunu, who's going to give a vote of thanks.
Namaskar and greetings to all of you. On behalf of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, I am honored today to deliver a vote of thanks on our 17th episode of the program India A Feeling. This is an online travel series. Now allow me to thank our online guest, Ms.Kubashnee, Naicker, a school teacher at Grandmore Primary School in Phoenix, and Mr. Kandy, Pillay, a school principal at Maidstone Primary School in Phoenix. Today our online guests, when they were narrating their Indian stories, they visited India in different times, but when you listen to them, there is this common ground that they have, whereby both are appreciating and they valuing India, more this time, and also they were so happy to be in India, and they are also looking forward to go back and visit India. So to Kubashnee ji and Mr. Kuben Pillay ji, thank you very much for both of you for narrating these wonderful stories about India. To Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, Mr. Sashil Mena, our Program Director, Ms. Arti Rajkumar, thank you very much for taking part on today's program. To all those who participated online, we would like to say thank you for being with us. You are kindly advised to visit ICCR Indeben Facebook page for more information on cultural activities organized by Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center in that. Once again, to Ms.Kubashnee, Naicker, and Mr. Kandy, Pillay, thank you very much for taking part on today's program. To all of you, have a wonderful evening. Namaskar.